Welcome to Thrive, the new live chat series brought to you by Greenish Natural Health. This is Annu Gaidhu, Ayurvedic health practitioner as well as yoga teacher. I'm here to share with you some valuable information from some of our guest experts who will be sharing how they're navigating their health and wellness through this time. Stay tuned every single week and be sure to sign up on our Facebook group in the link that we email you so that you can stay tuned for who's going to be coming up next as well as for our free giveaways. After this episode, we'll be giving away a $50 gift card to use on our online website for you to purchase your health and wellness needs on www.greenish.com. So let's not wait. Here I have Meghan from Balance by Meghan, who's also a yoga and meditation instructor here from Toronto, and I can't wait to see what she has to say.
Hello.
Hi, Meghan. Are we good?
I think so.
I can't see you yet. Okay, there you are. Awesome. Thank goodness. I feel like, there's already so much going on and like technology is the last thing that we need to like navigate through, but I have you and I'm so glad. I just wanted to make sure. So this is Meghan from Balance by Meghan, and you are a yoga and meditation instructor from Toronto. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm actually just east of Toronto in the Pickering area.
Awesome. And
Mhm.
so, I'm also a yoga teacher, and I always find it interesting to just start off by asking how your journey with yoga began and, what's your experience and how yoga found you.
Yeah, so my story is a very long story that I'm going to try to condense for you in a very small amount of time. But I was diagnosed very, very young with anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and asthma. And I mean, the OCD would just exacerbate the anxiety, the depression. I was put on medication very, very young, like grade 4, grade 5, in therapy young. And then I was sexually abused by a family member when I was 12, and that led into suicide tendencies. Like I was a self cutter, and I was just in a very dark place for a very, very long time. My mom had tried to get me into yoga when I was about 15, strictly for the breathing aspect of it. She thought it could help me control my asthma attacks. It never really stuck with me until I was about 21 and I met my now husband, but at the time he was my boyfriend. And he had been on medication similar to mine. And he was like, Meghan, you have to come off of this. Like, you can do it. I believe in you. So I never recommend this. I came off of my medication cold turkey. Please don't do that. My doctor was very upset with me. But I just I had wanted to make such a life change. Although I was very depressed and I was just a sad teenager and a young adult. And I knew that there was something more to life. Like I would see friends who were actually enjoying their life. And I was like, why can't that be me? And I literally made a decision one night, and it blows people away. Like I've had studies done on me by doctors because they're just like, I don't understand how you switch this light or switch this off, this OCD. I stopped all of my OCD tendencies and they were out of control. A few of them took me a few years to stop, but literally overnight there were things that I just stopped doing. It was hard. I came off my medication, and because I used to nap all the time when I was on my meds, they were tranquilizers.
Mhm.
I was bored. You know, there would be windows of like 2 or 3 hours where I'd be like, I nap now. What is there to do? And it sounds kind of woo-woo-ish, but this little voice literally said in my head, you got to do yoga. And I was like, well, yoga. Okay, if I'm going to do yoga, I'm going to make it a workout. And so literally threw on this YouTube video. It was a power yoga class. It was 20 minutes and it kicked my butt. But I felt so good. And I was like, from this time on, I'm going to do this exact video until I can master it. I'm going to do it 3 days a week. 3 days turned to 4 days, days turned to 5 days. And then I was doing it every single day. And I'm not saying like hour long flows or anything. They would be like 20 minutes, half an hour. But I immediately noticed could go to my mat frazzled, upset, angry, whatever it was, and I would come away leaving more relieved. I would have like a solution to a problem that I couldn't figure out before I got on my mat. And even though it started as a very physical practice for me, it became so much more, emotionally, I was feeling better. I was happier. At the time I was working corporate, and even like my, fellow colleagues were like, you just seem more calm. You seem more responsive rather than reactive to things. And like the common denominator was my yoga practice. So that's how I got started with yoga.
Wow, that's like so amazing to hear because, similarly, my journey was also the same. I had anxiety and depression and a lot of mental health challenges as a young child, trying to understand, and then also my own identity that I was growing into and trying to figure out that too. So, my time on my yoga mat, I originally went to yoga when hot yoga first came out.
Mhm.
As just to lose weight. Like there was never any intention where I'm like, I'm gonna, be able to self-regulate my emotions, start to calm down a little bit. It was strictly just, I want to look better. This seems like it's a good place to go. I hated going to the gym.
Mhm.
And slowly and surely, I would go every single day. And it was almost like the one day I didn't go, I felt almost like not myself. It was
Yeah, you feel off. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. And so I then realized I'm like, it's those moments on your mat and the spaces between, each breath that you take that you really get to connect with that inner voice. And I wanted to ask you, I kind of heard that in your own experience while you were sharing that there was like a shift in which you decided I'm going to commit to this practice. And then you were able to kind of notice the indicators in your life as to how it was making a benefit. So, my question to you is from your experience, what has been the greatest benefit of yoga?
Oh, there's so many. I think the biggest one is learning to manage my stress and anxiety,
Okay.
whether that is just, sitting down and doing a little bit of breathing or a little bit of meditation. Meditation for someone who was like, I was so against meditation. I was like, not for me. It, I will almost trade out doing a like a yoga asana practice for a meditation practice because it makes me feel so good. It shifts my energy completely. So managing stress and anxiety and shifting my energy into a more positive space has been like the biggest benefits I've noticed.
You had mentioned earlier how there was some breathing techniques that I believe it was your mom that wanted you to try out to help with asthma.
Yeah.
And you mentioned meditation now, and so I always find it interesting because I notice as well with people there's like a confusion sometimes as to what's meditation, what's breathing techniques, and then where does
Mhm.
yoga come in. So from your experience, was there a distinction for you as to what worked better in certain scenarios maybe, or what you learned?
Yeah, it's funny where I am now. I look back and I'm like, of course, breathing and meditation come hand in hand with yoga. I was trained in what we call the eight limbs. You can think of them for someone who's like the eight limbs. It's like the eight steps of yoga.
Hmm.
The first one is like how you treat others, and then it's like how you treat yourself, and then it's yoga poses or postures, what we call asana, like those pretty poses you see on Instagram and stuff. Then there's breathing techniques in that. There's intro to meditation, withdrawal of your senses, and then like that connection to divinity, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. It's like that connection.
Hmm.
So when I was trained in that kind of opened my mind to seeing that yoga is more than just a pose that you see online. And it's fine if that's why you come to yoga, but for me to understand that yoga is more of a lifestyle than it is like a tree pose that you see, that is where that distinction came into, like learning how to breathe properly. I'm trained in what we call vinyasa flow. So that's kind of that like that moving yoga flows that you see online. So there's always breathing in that. But when you actually learn that like how to breathe properly with the belly and the ribs, it changes things. And I know it sounds so silly, like how to breathe. Like I know how to breathe. You'd be surprised that the general population does not breathe accurately. They breathe through the chest. I was constantly that person who was like stuffed up. I was like, oh, I breathe through my mouth. I'm a mouth breather.
Same.
Right. And it wasn't until I've also been very lucky with the doctors that I've had. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, where doctors are like, here's pills, do this. My doctors were always like, you're not breathing through your nose. Like, it's as simple as you're not breathing through your nose. I was like, no, like there's something more. And they're like, no, just relax and breathe through your nose. And that made a huge difference too. So I'm trying to wrap it back up into the question. I feel like I went on a tangent.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good.
Okay. Yeah. So it was, breathing to me, you do that in meditation. Breathing very much calms me down. It very much brings me into a state of like being present.
Yeah.
Which then helps me in my meditation practice. I feel, even if I'm doing a guided meditation, if my mind is all over the place, I instantly go, okay, where's my breath at? And I'm like, kind of all over the place. And it's like, okay, bring it back to the breath. And that instantly makes my mind start to focus on the meditation. So that's how I've noticed how it all intertwines together. And then even with yoga, like doing a flow, breathing, moving properly with my breath helps me to focus in on my practice, be present, as opposed to like going through a to-do list and checking like a yoga practice off of my task bar, if you will.
That's great because I almost love how there was like a similarity in our experiences, especially when it comes to mental health and even asthma. I'm wondering, just anybody who's listening, if they're also possibly experiencing maybe the same type of issues. What are some things that you would advise for somebody who's like your younger self, maybe in where to begin, like where do you start? You had that 20-minute video, I believe, that you used to watch, right? Is there suggestions that you have for?
Yeah. Uh, Start with 5 minutes. It can be a 5-minute breathing or meditation. And it does not have to be this hour-long, sitting in a dark room, cross-legged, chanting. Like that, I feel like that's an image a lot of people hold, and that's not the case. It can be 5 minutes. Find somebody who you resonate with that, even if they're not a yoga teacher, maybe they're like, hey, I do breath work with blah, blah, blah. And start to do, like, there's so many videos, there's so many podcasts out there that have meditations or breath work aspects to it. But I would say just take 5 minutes, find somebody who can guide you through, rather than just trying to flail and do it on your own. Find somebody who's like step by step. Okay, breathe into the belly, breathe into the lungs, in through the nose, pause, exhale through the mouth. Because if you don't know, why would you sit there and try to guess how to do it? Find somebody, find a teacher, a coach, or a mentor who will show you how to do it. And you'd be shocked at what 5 minutes can actually do physically, emotionally, and mentally for you. But that's where I would start. 5 minutes. Just commit. You're probably going to spend that time on Facebook or Instagram anyways. Take 5 minutes of that time and do something good for yourself.
That's great. I also noticed on your website you have a free 20-minute flow, I believe, for anyone who signs up. And so I also wanted to share that as well because, what's better than getting it directly from you? And so that'll be really awesome. I'm going to make sure I have that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to just ask you was in regards to some of the mental health issues that you were experiencing, did you notice like a shift right away, or was there some sort of indicator maybe that made you feel like, okay, I have a handle on these things now and I'm able to cope with them? What were some of those things?
Yeah. So I know anybody who's listening to this, it sounds like I did it overnight. And that's not the case. Like I've really learned to embrace that this is a journey, and some days are better than others. Yes, instantly I noticed right away, I felt even 5% more relief. Like I was just a little bit more calmer leaving a yoga mat or doing my meditation practice. The the more internal work takes a little bit to notice, but it's a long-term game. So there's so many short-term quick solutions that are like a band-aid. And yes, even though you will experience, even a little bit more calmness, or even on a physical aspect with yoga, a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more strength, it's that long-term game that over time, in a week for some people, in a month for others, but this will be like a 30, 50, 60, 70-year lifestyle that you'll notice all these benefits will start to come to fruition. I have been doing my yoga poses practice, asana practice for 5 years. I'm way more flexible than I used to be. There are still a lot of poses I can't do. Maybe I'll do them one day, maybe I'll never do them, but my flexibility is improved. I'm a small person, but I'm the heaviest I've ever been in a very healthy way. My muscle mass has improved. Emotionally, I'm just a way calmer, nicer person. I'm more compassionate. That is one thing I will say I noticed probably very quickly, is my compassion shifted. I've never been like a mean person. I was bullied for a lot of my life. So I've always been a little nicer. I guess that's just who I am. But, I could see things from someone else's perspective very easily after doing even a 20-minute flow. And, sometimes that lasted the day, sometimes that lasted a few weeks. And every time I stuck to a practice, it was like being ingrained in my brain, being ingrained in my body. And everything now is so natural to me.
I love listening to that because it reminds me almost of just that transformation that you do experience. And I feel like it is a lot to do with self-love. And with self-love, that comes self-acceptance, there comes just the ability to accept without judgment. And so I wonder how that relates to you, and if possibly maybe self-love was something that you experienced as well throughout your journey.
Yes, that is such a great question. Thank you for bringing that up, because I was that type of person who very much looked to the external world for validation, for confidence. I was in the modeling world for a little bit, and even though I did enjoy the people I met, the connections, the experiences I had in it, so much of it was based on, it sounds so shallow, but at the time it was like, am I pretty enough to be in this space? It's also it hits on your mental health, man. Like I wanted a boob job for the longest time. Like, I'm just going to put it out there, be really frank about it. That used to be something I was super self-conscious of, is like, I have very small boobs. And just doing yoga and meditation and just being okay with, this is my body. I'm grateful for the fact that I even have a body that I can move and that I can work out with and that I can do all these things. I don't care about that stuff anymore. I'm happier with the person I am, and I'm more confident than I've ever been. And I feel like that really resonates to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people will say to me, you're so positive. I'm so drawn to you. You're so energetic. And that wasn't the case before. Before, I was very frazzled. It was like, oh God, I hope people like me. And again, this is a journey. It's not to say that sometimes, if someone doesn't like me for whatever reason, it doesn't affect me, but I'm much more confident than I used to be. And that was something that really surprised me with my yoga journey, was how much I learned to stop being so mean to myself and start really embracing and loving myself more than allowing other people to be like, yes, this is acceptable. Yes, you are loved, and stuff like that.
I thank you so much for sharing that. I know I mean, I can even speak for myself. Like, my own reason to begin yoga was straight from just trying to look better, So I was overweight at that time. I'm also a small person. So for me, 5 pounds is like, you can see it pretty obviously, like where I've gained that. So for me, it was also almost like a superficial reason as to why I initially began. But I'm just grateful that, somehow I got on the map, because that's actually where the real work started to happen. And I just wanted to ask you, just in general, your experience with yoga and meditation, and just on your own perspective of yourself and your identity, do you feel that it's been a major part in informing who you know yourself to be today, your practice?
Yeah, I feel like it has opened me. I mean, there's been other modalities for sure that have really shown me who my true self is, but it's been sometimes it's super frustrating and sometimes it's like I wish I knew the answer, but for the most part, it's been a really fun journey to just use these practices to understand myself a little bit better. It's like to understand, like, does this light me up? Does this make me feel good? No, it doesn't, but I'm doing it because, I want so and so to be happy with me. That I've really started to tap into and to understand myself a little bit better. I'm not sure if you're familiar with human design at all, but that has been something that's really come up for me a lot lately. And that has also given me permission to be super free with myself and to understand myself in a way that I feel like we can take a lot of external influences and be like, I'm supposed to be this way. I'm supposed to do all those things. I'm supposed to. And sometimes the stuff resonated with me and other times it'd be like, that doesn't feel true to me, but so-and-so is doing it. So I feel like I should be doing it. And all of this has really given me the tools to tap in and to be like, what feels good to me? Even if it doesn't always please other people, how can I be kind about that and show compassion to them, but also not jeopardize myself?
That's kind of I love that because I feel that's the vibe that I got off of even seeing your work and being able to tap into. You have a podcast as well where I know you talk about spiritual and wellness and health in general and these topics every single week, and especially with human design, that's something that I've been dabbling into as well, which makes me curious to know what is your
So
human
blown.
design?
I'm a projector with self-projected authority.
Okay, I'm a manifester.
Ooh.
The manifester, my authority type, oh man, I forgot what it was now, but I just remember when I read the description of everything it was saying, I had tears in my eyes and I was
Yes.
like, okay, so I'm not crazy?
No, I like sobbed my eyes out reading it. I was like,
Yeah.
it's funny because you're like, it's not new to you. Like it all feels intuitive. You're like, yes, 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 yes. And for me, I was like trying to be that generator, right? I was trying to be that hustler, that Gary V type of person. And
Yeah.
I kept feeling so out of alignment and I was bitter that things weren't going the right way for me. I was like, I'm working 24 hours a day at this. How am I not seeing the results that, so-and-so is seeing and Gary V says we should see and these people. And even though I love yoga and meditation, I was burning myself out doing it, which was confusing. I was like, I love this. Why is this happening to me all the time? So that was like, it's like a weight off your shoulders. You're like, it gives you permission to be exactly who you're supposed to be, which sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Mhm.
But it's that permission slip that I think we all need to be like, yes, that is me to a T. And this feels right.
I exactly. And I feel like it kind of gives you a language to understand your experience almost because sometimes you can't really make sense of what's going on, but you can kind of put language to somehow come to some sort of, understanding of what it is that you're experiencing. And as I started to learn more about myself and more about just the way I'm operating in my relationships and the way that I show up at work and the way that I show up just in my daily life. It made me really see that, of course, my passion lied with yoga, and I am a yoga teacher, but I noticed that my work mainly had a lot to do with uplifting other people's spirits as well and having them also be able to become introspective to their own uniqueness and their own ability to have and cultivate self-love and appreciation just for them being themselves, just for showing up on the mat and doing the work. And so I wanted to ask you, as a fellow teacher, is there something that you've been noticing that's been like a general theme that possibly your clients or people you've worked with that you've noticed have asked you for advice on, or something that you're noticing that you work on a little bit more than usual in service?
Yeah, I think that a very popular theme that comes up is like people think they're getting a stretch on or like doing a workout. And like as yoga teachers, you're like, I know more is coming to you for this.
Yeah.
It's almost like you get people in. For me, a lot of people come to me for a physical aspect. I got to stretch, I need flexibility, I need to work out, whatever it is. And instantly people who have worked with me, even after a class or a few classes, are like, man, yoga is so much more than just the physical aspect. And I don't like, I like to like let that be a little surprise for people. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are in for so much more than you bargained for. Because I feel like if you come out, or at least for me, if I come out and be like, I talk about the benefits of it, I share my story all the time, but people need to experience it for themselves, right? It's, you can tell somebody all day how amazing yoga is, how the benefits of meditation, but hook them in. Like for me, I'm like, I hook them in with like the physical aspect. I'm like, yeah, you want to increase flexibility? Okay, come on in. And then I throw a little bit of like yoga philosophy into it, or like something based on like the chakra system, that I make it very beginner friendly. Because in my experience, there's some yoga teachers out there, they're incredible teachers, but sometimes they talk and you're like, what in the world are they going on about? As a beginner, you're like, solar plexus chakra muladhara, I don't understand what any of this means.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I like to break things down in a very beginner friendly way, but then they'll be like, I felt very like, is it weird that I feel super emotional when I'm doing like a lot of hip work? And it's like, okay, like, let's talk about this a little bit more. Like, do you feel like you're lacking creativity? Is there something in your life that you experience that, closed off that sexuality for you? And not sexuality in like a very sexual way, but that sexuality in general. Do you feel good in yourself? Do you feel like you're very deprived of it? Like, what is there more going on than just you have tight hips?
Yeah. Getting them to dive in a little bit more deeper into, really it is that design, and I just wanted to connect it to you even speaking about the chakras and talking about just the language and how sometimes people, you may be experiencing it, and it could be some root chakra issues, let's just say, but in order to get people to digest what that could mean and how that shows up in their lives, I guess you have to kind of distill it down in simple language for them to really comprehend what it is that's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you what your passion was behind turning your experience and your journey into a business with Balance by Megan.
Yeah, you know what is really funny is that I don't remember having a very distinct passion growing up. When I was younger, I wanted to be a police officer because I wanted to help people. And then I worked in that field, and it was like, how can I help people in a more reactive way rather than responsive, rather than after something bad has happened and I fix it, how can I help them have the tools to heal and to move through this themselves? So I don't really think I had a passion. I mean, I've always been like an outdoor person. Travel is even like a recent passion of mine within the last 10 years. Before that, it was like, unless it was like Florida for Disneyland or Disney World, whatever's there, like there wasn't things that I was like super passionate about. There were things that interested me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was recently, like Jay Shetty was just on a podcast and he's like, a lot of people freak out about trying to find their purpose. And it's like, that's like the end goal. It's like, let's start with the basic, like what simply interests you? And then we can, I'm interested in, art, and I'm interested in, crafts and stuff, but that's not a passion of mine. I like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga was an interest of mine that I noticed so many differences in myself that it became almost an obsession, and not in a bad way, but an obsession of like, I gotta learn more about this. I want to become an expert in it. Like I want to learn more than just the basics of like a pose. And that's what came into a passion. And then from there, my passion was like, how do I inspire and empower others to just start? You know, that's my goal. It's like, whether you come to yoga from like, I want to lose weight, I want to increase flexibility. You know, my doctor said I should try yoga. I have no idea what I'm doing here, but like, let's try yoga. It's just starting them. And then, you know, you give them a little bit more than just the beginner stuff.
That's so great. I can't wait to hear that episode. I was just going to ask you a question about your podcast as well to kind of get to know, what has been your favorite topic so far, or expert in which it's like in your mind prevalent, that stands out.
Ooh, you know what? I started my podcast because doing teacher training, I was blown away by the stories from people who came to yoga. You know, some people are like, I came to yoga because I was a dancer, and that was like a nice compliment. I came to yoga because I was going through a divorce, and it was a way to help me, manage my sadness. Like, there were so many interesting stories, and it all stemmed into yoga. So, there hasn't been like one person that has stood out to me, because everybody has a really interesting, incredible story of why they came to, and not all of them are like yoga poses per se. Some of them are like why I came to breath work, or
Mm.
why I got interested in Reiki. So that has been really interesting to me as well, is to like expand it more than just the yoga poses. So like more in the world of like following those 8 limbs of yoga, following like what's a cool connection to yoga. Like Reiki has been something that's been really interesting to dive into. So human design,
Hmm.
that's been something that it's a mindset shift for me. I'm like, to me, it was like, why can't these two be infused together? They're based off of well, not based off of the entire chakra system, but there's aspects of that. But I had a really hard time distinguishing that those can meld together very nicely. They really do. But I was like, maybe they're separate. And it was like, just listening to people talk about how they use different modalities to heal themselves has been very interesting.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question, just about the online membership that you have. So you do have a yoga on demand online membership, which I think is so dope. I love that. I noticed that, with the COVID situation, everything is becoming online now. And so what has been your experience, I guess, maybe pre-COVID to during and post, maybe like with the online membership and just your own business?
Yeah, I've always wanted an online membership. Um, that's how I got started. And to me, yoga, unfortunately, studio prices can be very expensive. And that has been something that I I believe in investing yourself. I absolutely do. But I don't think people should not have the opportunity to do yoga because they can't afford a monthly membership price. It's like, I wanted people to still take themselves seriously. So my membership is 10 USD a month, which is like, people spend that more on coffee in a week than they do for this membership for a month. So still, like, take yourself seriously, be invested in this. We all know if we get something free, it doesn't have that same value. And I do a lot of free stuff, but the membership was, for me, really important for people to invest in themselves, to be like, yes, I'm dedicated and I'm doing this. I also wanted people to be able to practice on their time. Like, sometimes people can't make that 5 o'clock yoga class at the local studio because they work to 8 o'clock. Why should they miss out on doing yoga just because their work life doesn't adhere to a studio's schedule? So I wanted people to be able to practice all over the world. Maybe they have 20 minutes at 4:15, but they wouldn't have done yoga class if it was like, I have to commit to an hour at 5 o'clock and I can't make it because I have work.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's why that was really, really important to me. And then, I was teaching locally pre-COVID. Unfortunately, the one studio I worked for couldn't bounce back from COVID. They had to close down permanently. I was also teaching prenatal at another studio. They won't be bringing prenatal back. I don't blame them until this is all sorted out. So even though I've wanted to be online for a while, this was like a really great push for me to make this happen.
I think it's great. I mean, with the way things are moving now, it's just a matter of time until everything is online. But I think it's so important that what you drew attention to in the beginning of finding a teacher that resonates with you and that can connect with you for the things that you're also experiencing and that they have expertise and guidance to safely, help you in your journey. So where are some places where people can find you online for more information and the services that you offer, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for this opportunity. So Instagram is where I hang out the most. It's at Balance by Meghan, Meghan. That's my social media handle, literally across all platforms. So Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, it's at Balance by Meghan. And then my website is just www.balancebymeghan.com. That's where I post. Again, we're in COVID, so I'm not doing any retreats at the moment, but before COVID, I posted, retreats. I'm doing a virtual retreat soon for the fall. I'm doing a couple of workshops coming up. So that will all be on my website. I have an intro to human design workshop coming up, and then another how to start an at-home meditation practice coming up. That's all there. The podcast lives there. My podcast is across all major podcast platforms. And then my membership is also linked on there. So if I resonate with you as a teacher, also reach out and say, hey, I love when people are like, hey, I heard you on, this show, or I connected with you through here. Mm-hmm. I love getting to know people. So say, hey, let me know what you're interested in. And I can always kind of guide you into like answering questions about the membership. Is it a good fit? I do work one-on-one with people. Right now it's virtual, but that's always an option too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Meghan, for coming in today and talking to me, even though we had technical difficulties. I do appreciate it. I'm going to just end it off here. I'll be back with you in just a minute.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share that with everyone who's listening, as well as I'll leave your details in the show notes for people to write back if they have any questions for you or anything related to what we talked about today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you have it. That was Meghan from Balance by Meghan sharing with you some of her best tips on yoga and meditation. We have a giveaway to share. By watching this episode, you're automatically entered to win a $50 e-gift card to use online at www.greenish.com. If you join our Facebook group, you'll get notified about when the next episode will be, as well as you have the option to send us in any questions that you have for our future guests, or if there was anything that you wanted to ask Meghan today, be sure to hit me up or send us a message and we'll be sure to get your questions answered for you. Thank you for hanging out with me and Greenish, and I'll see you next time.